All right, graphic design, I'm going to show you how to do the typography project, both in Illustrator and in Photoshop using a high contrast image, whether it's a person, an object, or an animal. So I chose a Michael Jackson image that I'm now going to change into a black and white format, so it's a little bit easier for me to see the tonal range of highlights, midtones, and shadows. So you want to make sure that this toolbar is up. If for some reason it is not visible on the top, go to the window menu, go to workspace, and make sure there's a check mark next to the word automation. Sometimes it defaults to essentials, but automation that allows you to select the image and image trace it. It's going to give you a very generic black and white image. You can change it under the preset, and I'm now going to change it to shades of gray, and that way I get only gray tones that I can now read as value. I'm then going to zoom in, and I'm going to start adding text to the eyebrow area or any of the shadow areas. So I click on my text tool, I start typing, and then I can change the font by highlighting it, and then at any time I can change which font it is so that I can get a nice thick font or a darker font, whatever would work for your particular design, and you can change up the fonts or keep the same one. I'm now going to position the word close to wherever it is that I want to actually fill in the space. You can see the word eyebrow there is on black over top of the really dark gray of the eyebrow itself. Now I'm going to actually create an object, and I'm going to go to envelope distort. This time I'm going to make with mesh, but I want to show you what make with warp does because this is important for both Photoshop and Illustrator. There are some already defaulted different warp options, so it may work for some of yours to use these warp options, and you can preview what each one looks like. Depending on what you'd like, you can change these bars back and forth and it adjusts the look of it. In this case, I'm going to actually use the envelope distort so I can have a little bit more control. I generally use the same number of rows as 4 and the same number of columns as the number of letters in the word. So 4 is just typical for rows. Columns, I'm going to make it 7 and then hit OK. And what that does is it puts a little mesh over top of the actual word. Now using my white arrow tool, I have the control of actually clicking on the word. However, I want to make sure that I have the layer with the image locked underneath. So I'm going to go to my window menu, make sure that my layers are apparent. So I'm going to pull these layers up here. And I just want to make sure that that image right here that has Michael Jackson on it is locked. So when I'm moving things around, I don't accidentally move the eyebrow. I only move the text that I want to move. So I'm using my white arrow tool, and I'm going to just control by grabbing over top of specific dots. So I'm just dragging and dropping. And what this is allowing me to do is just kind of stretch everything and kind of make it fit within the eyebrow itself. And then I can start to distort a little bit more as I go. So you're basically doing a big move first, and then you'll kind of fine tune it as you go. So my E there got a little big, so I'm just going to kind of spread it out. Now I can select specific dots, and I can just pull these dots and make them fit within the shape even more to just kind of form or fit those dots in. I'm going to go back and do that again because I was having a hard time seeing those dots. So now I'm just going to pull and just kind of make it fit within the shape. It doesn't have to be exact. This is kind of a general look. You can always go back and kind of fine tune later once you have more of your shapes in and more of your text in, depending on how many layers you do and so forth. So I'm just kind of fine tuning right now. This takes a little bit of time, but you get good at it. And you determine what words will work the best for your spaces as well. The words are up to you. Whatever you'd like to use is your choice. So I'm getting a little bit closer to filling in this eyebrow here, just kind of filling it in as best I can, just making it look like it kind of fits within this shape. Even if I lose the actual word a little bit, that's okay. I'm actually going to undo that a little bit here. I had one cross over a little bit. So I'm going to pull that down there a little bit more. Now, if I want to kind of peek at what I've done and just see how it's starting to look, I can hide the layer that has the image on it. And this is what I'm starting to get. I'm starting to get that idea of eyebrow. So that's how you start to kind of fit it within that space. Then as you get more complicated and into some of these other spaces, you might have some layering. You may have to change the color. So I'm going to show you one more. I'm I'm going to use the word I, and then I would like it to actually take on one of these colors, so maybe this gray tone color. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to actually eyedropper the color that I want it to match. So I'm using one of the eye colors, and now I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to now start to fit it within the shape of that eye. So I'll go back to my object menu, envelope, distort, make with mesh. I want to do 4 rows, and this time I only really need about 3 of my columns because I don't have a ton that I need to move this for. So I'm now going to just kind of stretch and get this to fit within this space. And I have a little less to move around. And it gets a little bit hard to see it because it is the same color, but it also helps you at the same time kind of align it. So you'll notice that you'll have a little bit more control once you kind of fit it within this space, and you can grab a couple dots at a time. You can hold the Shift key to grab more and kind of fit it in. Okay, so let's take a peek at that. So now you can start to see that that's starting to fit within that frame as well. So that's how you're going to work in Illustrator to get that image to actually work. Now, in Photoshop, if I was to paste my image in, there's my image that I grabbed from Google. I'm going to transform the image by using Command T or Edit Transform. You can see here is Command T as my shortcut on a Mac. And then I'm going to make it as large as I can. You don't have to hold Shift. I always forget that now. You used to have to hold Shift to make it transform, and then you hit return when you have it transformed to the image size that you want. Now you can bring the image already broken down into black, white, and gray from Illustrator and just paste it in, or you can do it within this menu as well. So I can go to my filter menu in my filter gallery, and then I can use something called posterize. So under our artistic, right here, you can see that there's all of these different ones, and I'm basically posterizing the image. So I'm going to go to the one that's called cutout. In this cutout one, see that it changes the levels and the number of colors. And so in this case, I want about 5 colors. So I'm going to change number of levels to 5 colors, and then I'm going to hit the OK button. This allows me to keep the tonality of the face if I would like. If I want it to just be black and white, I can go into the image menu, adjustments, and actually change it to black and white. And then it changes the entire thing to black and white, which is really handy as well. So you can see what it was in color and then what it is in black and white, depending on what you'd like to do. And you can use a monochromatic scheme as well. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to show you again how to use Photoshop, but now you're using more of a layers technique. So I'm going to lock my layer 1 and I'm going to create a new layer, and this is where my text will be. Although every time you type text, it actually makes its own layer, so technically you don't have to do that. Let me find a fun font here that's maybe a little bit more bold, just to show you. And then obviously you can change the point value here as well, or you can just transform it as needed. So I'm going to start by using the warp option, which is up here in this toolbar as well. And I'm going to warp it, maybe arc it a little bit to start to match. And then obviously I can bend it different directions. I can distort it different ways. I'm going to make it a little wider on the left. I don't really need to do much with the vertical distortion. That's more just to show you to play with. Now, if I would like to move this object, I need to use my move tool, and now it's really big. So I'm going to transform it, and I'm just going to make it smaller so that I can rotate it and kind of start to play with the shape a little bit. So I'm working with the whole entire shape at this point, and I can stretch it and change it and adjust it as needed. But the other cool thing, I hit return to accept the changes, is I can adjust this by layering. So I can copy that layer and paste it. And now I have another version of it, and you can start to twist it and turn it as well. So I'm using my transform, which is Command T, and I can start to layer and stack this on top of itself. And what that does is it creates value just by layering. So if I hide the layer that has the image in, I'm starting to actually create an eyebrow. And so what you're doing is you're not affecting the entire shape by each individual letter, you're just affecting it by stacking and layering. So this is a little bit more like shading with pencils. You just layer more and more over top, and then you can create that space. The other thing you can do is you can type within those spaces that are the gray tones and create a kind of interesting pattern there as well. This is probably easiest done in Illustrator, but if you prefer Photoshop, there is a way to do it in Photoshop. You just can't individually do each letter. I hope that helps. Good luck. Let me know if you have questions. Enjoy the process.